Hi guys, welcome! Today I'm going to show you how I made this box of chocolates cake. The first thing I did was buy a box of chocolates that I thought was beautiful and trace it onto foam core to create my cake board. Then I cut it out with a scalpel and covered it with contact paper to make it grease proof. Next I used that cake board as a cutting guide to cut my cakes. You'll notice that they don't fit the cakes exactly, but that's okay. You'll see why soon. Now I'm going to smear a tiny bit of my Swiss meringue buttercream onto my cake board and lay down my first cake. Next I'll put another layer of buttercream to create my filling. Finally I'm going to lay my second layer on top. At this point I'm going to use a sharp knife to trim off the edges of my cake to better fit my cake board and to allow some room for frosting. Next I'm going to apply a thick layer of frosting to the top of my cake. Once the frosting has been spread out evenly, I will put a piece of wax paper onto the top and be sure to press out all the air bubbles. Then I will pull my cake board out from underneath the cake, flip it over, put it on top of the cake, and flip the cake itself over. Then I'll use my offset spatula to pull any of the icing from underneath the cake up onto the sides, and then use my bench scraper to make sure none of the frosting is extending past the cake board. Next I will apply icing all over the sides of the cake. Once the sides of the cake are heavily covered, I will use my bench scraper to scrape away the excess. Since the cake is still upside down, the cake board acts as a guide. When I hold my bench scraper 90 degrees, it creates a straight line going up the side of the cake. Next I'll let the cake chill and the frosting harden. Once it has chilled, I will cut away any pieces of cake that are sticking out through the frosting. Then I will add another coat of frosting to cover the holes and to also cover the holes from the air bubbles. Once I have applied a thin layer all over, I will use my hot bench scraper to smooth it one last time. Very carefully use a bench scraper to pull the frosting away in both directions from the V at the top and the point at the bottom. Now I'm going to measure the height of my cake all the way around since I plan to panel this one. I've rolled out strips of fondant that are the height of my cake, and I'm going to apply them to the side of the cake using water. My cake is still upside down at this point. This will help give us that perfect top edge without having to line it up and measure and cut. I'm placing my seams at the points on the heart to make them less visible. Use a ruler and a scalpel to make the least visible seams. Now I'm using a sharp razor blade along the top, which is actually the bottom of the cake, to cut off the excess. Next I'm going to roll out a couple of smaller strips of fondant to wrap around the sides of the cake to look like the lid. I'm still doing this while the cake is upside down in order to keep the top edge nice and straight as before. The height of this cake really depends on personal preference. I wanted more cake, so I've chosen to make mine a little taller, but you can go shorter if you'd like a more realistic chocolate box. The sides of my box lid are about 1.5 inches tall. I'm applying them with water. The cake is still upside down at this point, so they look like they're on the bottom, but they're actually on the top. Make sure not to add too much water. You don't want it to drip down onto the board and make the fondant slimy. If you find that your fondant lid is not flush with the bottom board anywhere, you can use your smoother to gently push it down into place. And now carefully flip your cake over, right side up, removing the wax paper. Now it's time to roll out a piece of fondant big enough to cover the top of the cake. My cameraman completely screwed up and forgot to record the next part. Just kidding, obviously I don't have a cameraman and I completely screwed up. So I had to replay the next part using a cake dummy. Going to lay your fondant over the top of your cake and smooth it. Next, lay your cake board over the top of the cake and flip it upside down as before. Using a very sharp knife, we're going to really carefully cut along the edge of the cake. This is going to allow the seam to be on the side of the cake as opposed to the top. This way it is much less noticeable. Obviously, you'll be doing this to your heart-shaped cake. Now back to the real one. Flip it over once more and smooth out any seams that might have appeared along the top edge. Brush shortening around the sides of the cake to remove any powdered sugar. For this next part, I'm going to use some edible lace that I made. You can make it yourself at home or you can purchase it pre-made online. I'm using piping gel to stick it to my cake. Time to flip the cake back over. Apply your wax paper, put the cake board on top, and flip. Use a sharp knife to cut off the excess lace, making sure you don't drag it. Once you're satisfied with that, flip the cake back over and gently remove the wax paper. Isn't it beautiful? I've typed and printed a gift tag message with my edible printer, but you're definitely welcome to handwrite or paint one directly onto fondant. I've used my 2-inch circle cutter to punch out the message and am now gluing it onto my fondant with water. Now I'm creating a bow. There are about 1,000,001 ways to create bows. I just hand drew a simple template and am cutting it out of black gum paste. You can do it however you would like, and there are plenty of templates online if you need one. Now I'm going to glue my bow pieces together with piping gel and let them dry a bit. Now I'm rolling out one long fondant strip to use as the ribbon that goes across my lid. To avoid getting piping gel everywhere, I'm going to lay the strip across the top of my cake first. When I'm satisfied with its location, I'll add the piping gel underneath and stick it down. Then I'll use my quilting ruler to straighten it. I'm going to use a sharp razor blade to trim the sides. I will quickly use my clay extruder to make a small string for the gift tag. Now it's time to put everything together with piping gel. First I apply the gift tag, and then the ribbons for the bow, and then the bow itself. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please like it and share it, and also subscribe to my channel.